Okay, I'm Brent Gorda. I work for Whamcloud. Whamcloud is a company that was formed to help get Lustre out of the turmoil it was in. If you've been paying attention, there's been a bit of political issues with Lustre over the past couple of years. I'm here to try and convince you that all of that is over with, that Lustre is back in fine form and gaining strength, actually. So I'll talk a little bit about the history, talk a little bit about the company, talk about our current status, and looking forward what's coming down both this year and then further down the road with respect to this technology. Anybody who's been paying attention knows that Lustre started late in the last decade, 1999 or so. It was funded primarily through an ASCII Path Forward project, which was a U.S. Department of Energy initiative to bring technologies up to where they needed for the big computers. I entered at that moment. I was an architect at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. In part, my job was to shepherd Lustre forward with the ASCII Path Forward project. My other work was the Blue Gene series of computers, which everybody presumably has heard of. So version 1 came out in 2003. There were some teething pains, of course, as with any new technology, especially with file systems. With a file system, you can't just reboot your technology and be back online like you can with an OS. If the file system corrupts its data, it needs to eat that dog food when it comes back and present data to somebody. So file systems are on a little bit of a different rule set compared to other things. So fast forward, in 2007, Sun Microsystems bought CFS. Those of us in the DOE community were a little bit concerned, but Andy Bechtelstein was telling us that Sun was in the HPC business, so all was cool. Along comes Oracle and consumes Sun. We got very worried at that point. I should mention here that one of the projects that Sun did with us at Livermore was the Hyperion testbed. We stood up a 100 teraflop system and dedicated it to testing the OFED stack and Lustre. So kudos to Sun and Oracle for being in that project, because they spent a huge amount of effort taking what was perceived as unstable technology in the 1.6 version and maturing it and strengthening it in the 1.8 version. In 2010, at the Lustre user group meeting, which was in April, so almost 2 years ago now, Oracle stood up, and the message that was received was, you had to buy Sun hardware to get the Lustre file system. In that meeting, my company was formed. In that talk, we decided that the community had to do something to bring Lustre back as community-centric, platform-neutral, and available to everybody. So Oracle, as history will show, Oracle released a 2.0 version in 2010, and that was the last major release they've done. There's been maintenance releases, of course. The current release is 2.1, which was released last September, I believe, by Whamcloud. 2.2 is coming out this quarter from us as well, and we've also done a number of maintenance releases. About the company, we were formed in the LUG user group meeting in Aptos in 2010 in April. I took $10 million in venture capital and was by myself on July 16th, 2010. Within about 6 months, we had 15 engineers with us, and we were starting to get traction. We're now 50 people in 6 countries with 4 companies. We are the model of a distributed company. We don't have offices. We've recently opened a small office in Boulder because there's a number of people that live there. Otherwise, we are completely based on the internet with Skype and those sorts of technologies. We have about 150 sites and growing by the day. We provide worldwide support in any time zone, any time of day. We're there to help you get your Lustre file system going. And I should point out, on any hardware platform. We don't sell hardware. We don't tell you what hardware to buy. We're here to support you in a vendor-neutral way. So what we offer is support, development. We do the heavy lifting on the tree, so when new features are being added to the tree, generally that's something that's paid for by big organizations such as the CEA or the DOE in the US. We're generally doing that heavy lifting. Training, we've been doing a number of training classes lately all over the world. They've been really successful this time around, and so we're pretty happy with the resurgence of interest there. And then something that I'll talk about a little bit, and later in the deck here, we're introducing a technology called Chroma, which is a GUI management interface that will allow you to install Lustre, provision failover, monitor what's going on in the system, and troubleshoot it. I think that sort of technology should have been done several years ago. So it's one of the things that I think is exciting about 2012 for Lustre. So today, Whamcloud is widely recognized as the source for Lustre. The exodus from Oracle is over. The community has rallied around one tree. There's not been a fork in the tree. There's one tree. All of the vendors pull from that tree to do their own releases for their own hardware, and we support those vendors. A little bit of a who's who. All of the people here, except myself, were in the Lustre, on the developer side of Lustre. I jumped from being a customer of Lustre that really cared about it to now being in charge of the team that's exited Oracle to take on the technology. A little bit about the community. In all of this, the users of Lustre have banded together and created two really strong community groups. In Europe, there's the European Open File System. Hugo Falter will be here, I believe, tomorrow talking on that topic. And in the US, there's a group called the Open Scalable File Systems. We are founding members in both of those organizations. We strongly support them. They strongly support us. It's really the community coming together to keep Lustre whole and move it forward, and it's worked out incredibly well. The community assets are hosted with Whamcloud right now. So probably the most important URL here is the wiki. If you go to the wiki, you can tell specifically what we're working on. You can see architectural papers. You can see up-to-date everything on what's going on with respect to Lustre development. And it's not just from us. The tree is open source. There are other developers. We invite them to contribute their architectural papers and put them on that web page. So we're hosting all of this to let the community see what's coming down the line and let them have input to it if they so choose. All of the Lustre releases are available at the next URL, not just the ones we've done, but historically the ones that have gone back in time. You can go there to get them. We have the bug tracker with, I believe, every single bug is now open. That did not used to be the case. It used to be the case that some of the bugs were hidden. To date, the bugs have all been open. We're trying to encourage everybody to submit open bugs. There's going to be some political issues where that may not be the case always going forward. Notice that the URL here is both opensfs.org and whamcloud.com for Jira and Garrett. Git repo there, it's updated pretty much in real time. You can pull from that repo whenever you want, get a current snapshot of the code. We've got the Garrett code review, which is a very interesting site. If you go there, you can see up-to-date everything. I've got a snapshot and a slide that I took, and I took it just before I burned these slides because the up-to-date information I get is the same up-to-date information you get if you go to our website. Everything's done completely in the open. And then, of course, there's the build. An important thing we did here is that we are specifically polluting the copyright in Lustre. What that means is no single entity owns Lustre now. Moving forward, if somebody decides they want to take Lustre in a different direction, they have to get every group that has IP in that source code to agree to move it in that direction. I don't want anybody taking Lustre away from us again. And I don't want to have that power myself because I can be fired. I should go check my email, actually. So we are very serious about keeping this in the community. It's the community tree from our point of view. The Lustre development activity, like I said, the major development is done at Whamcloud with the majority of the same engineers that have been doing it all along. We've got the long-range vision. Eric Barton, who's the CTO, took over the architectural role when Sun took over CFS, and so he's been the architect for the past several years. He is providing the vision moving forward. One thing that we are absolutely adamant about is the stability of the source code and the tree, and that puts restrictions on several activities that we can do here. We're not going to get into a situation again where Lustre is perceived as dropping data, because I think that drives people away. Right now, the 1.8 line is incredibly stable, as I'll show. One thing that Whamcloud has done is we've invested heavily in an automated test infrastructure. So we've got a system in place such that when an engineer checks code in, an automatic build and test mechanism takes over distributed. We're working with the Jülich Computer Center on this so that we can take over one of their clusters and distribute from our cluster in California tests out to take maximum advantage of our ability to test. Okay, I talked a little bit about the support. We do worldwide support. We've got engineers in 10 different time zones, I believe. A little bit about what's going on in the source code right now. I'm going to try pressing a button. There we go. These are the patch landings for the recent 2.1 release. There's about 288 or so there. Notice that Whamcloud's doing about 90% of the actual code landings in the tree right now. A little bit less in terms of reporting bugs because there's a lot of users out there, especially at scale, that are running cross issues and putting them into the bug list. We work from the same bug list that everybody gets to see. Our customers put the bug in, we triage it in front of everybody in full view. A little bit on Lustre quality. Remember, Lustre's had a bad reputation in the past. Here's someone at Oak Ridge, Galen Shipman, who many of you know, claiming 100% availability. That's something that you wouldn't have expected Lustre to get 4 or 5 years ago. So I'm here to tell you Lustre 1.8, 7, 6, both of them are incredibly stable. There are banks using Lustre. Not something I would have expected when I started doing this, but there are banks using Lustre for live banking data. When their file system goes down, their users cannot access an ATM. Right? So Lustre is really getting to be that stable. This is the test matrix, and it's just a small corner of a big web page, and this is what I snapshotted just before I came in here. This is the real-time statistics on what's going on with the 2.2 release candidate, I believe, is what I took. So what you'll see is over time, it doesn't show so well here, but over time, you'll see generally red and orange over there, and as we move forward in time, moving forward is to the left, the boxes turn green, and when they're all green, we've got a release candidate that we can then burn and talk about with the community. All of it automated. We do 2 release lines with the current Lustre tree. The top line is a maintenance release, so it's a x.y.z kind of number that tells you that we're patching and fixing known issues and re-releasing the same feature set that we have done in the past. If you care about stability, you want to be on a 1.8.7 or 6, like I said, kind of release strain. We're about here in the timeline, and we just released the 2.1.1. We're a very small company. We could not afford to release a 1.8.8 because we don't have the infrastructure or the manpower. We had to choose between doing a 1.8.8 release and a 2.1.1. We chose the latter because we're trying to encourage the community to move forward in the 2.x releases, but we've not ruled out going back and doing a 1.8 if it's necessary. Underneath these boxes will tell you what sorts of features we're expecting, and of course, these are all kind of nailed down at this point. We're just doing final testing on 2.2. That should be out at the end of this quarter, or before LUG, which is next month. And then we've got the initial plans for 2.3 and 2.4. We're very conservative in our planning, so when you see something up here, it's almost a guarantee that it's going to be in. We even try to pull in the next release features, try to pull them into the previous release. If we have the bandwidth and we believe enough in the stability of that feature, we'll pull it up in a release and give it to you sooner. Oh, the other thing to note is that these are the sponsors of the features, so you can line them up and see who's donating the cash or the code to make these features happen. Some of the development items that we're working on. Brian, how am I doing for time? Do I? Okay. This is the current list of development items that are going on. I'll maybe pick out some highlights for you. Imperative recovery is something that has bit you if you've ever had a client time out and be evicted. There's a whole eviction and reconnect process that takes large amounts of times based on the size of your file system to synchronize. Thanks to Oak Ridge funding a project, we can now do a more proactive response, reconnect, and get the timeline way down from hours to minutes. There's a lot of SMP scaling issues because in the past, Lustre has been basically single-threaded, and so with the advent of multi-core, it's not been able to take advantage of the wider execution on the OSS and on the MDS. So we're checking in code to make it take advantage of that. A lot of people complain about ls minus l. When you type ls minus l, you have to go out to every OSS in your file system and read all of the data about the file you're coming after. That can take tens of minutes. It can probably even take longer. So users get frustrated with that. We're checking in features. I believe this is the feature where I saw a 7,000 times performance increase in the beta code that we've got. Wide striping, allowing your files to be striped over a huge number of OSTs. Much more parallelism, much more bandwidth to the file. I should point out that in this year, we're expecting to have 3 file systems that are running at 1 terabyte a second using Lustre. 1 terabyte a second, that's quite a big number, right? The fastest DDN equipment right now will run at about 10 gigabytes a second, and that's peak. We're talking about 1 terabyte a second achieved in 3 different locations. All of Google's infrastructure runs at about 1.5 terabytes per second. So we're standing up in a single machine room 3 times over, but in a single machine room, almost the same bandwidth that Google has in all of its infrastructure, right? This is high-performance computing. If you're not pushing the leading edge, somebody's going to kick your butt. OSD restructuring is very interesting. Right now, Lustre sits on top of ext4, and when you take a file system crash, you have to FSCK. With these bigger disks, FSCK can take hours, and if you take another hit while you're FSCKing, you're in trouble. So Livermore, my guys at Livermore, when I worked there, they ported ZFS up to the object layer to Linux with the intent of putting it underneath Lustre. We're completing that work now. We've got a new object interface to Lustre, and we're sitting it on top of ZFS. This is for the Sequoia project at Livermore, which was a Blue Jeans system that, remember, I worked on. That system will be 20 petaflops with a NetApp formatted file system of 55 petabytes and a goal of 1 terabyte a second. So it's truly on the high end. And it's all coming together in the next few months, I believe, if I remember the time schedule. The last one here is probably worth talking about. DNE is what we call this. If you've got a lot of small files, the metadata operations in Lustre can sometimes be a bottleneck. When I was a customer of Lustre, I paid to have what's called clustered metadata implemented. That project was never successful, so we didn't get the ability to have multiple metadata servers. In your file system today, if you're running Lustre, you have 1 metadata server, maybe a failover pair, but effectively 1 metadata server. We're fixing that. We're going to miss the next release, but in the release after that, you'll be able to have a metadata server specific to a subdirectory. So you have a metadata server for your file system, and if Bob is the guy that's causing you trouble, you can dedicate a metadata server to Bob, and he'll be away from everybody else. It's the first step towards the second half of the project, which will allow us to have true clustered metadata services. So the project was broken in half. We're delivering the first half of that this summer. That's going to be pretty exciting because some of the big sites really run into trouble when a user starts doing bad things. So we're looking forward to having that available. Here's some of the features looking forward. Server SMP scaling, check scrub online. OSD structuring will be checked in. This is the ZFS project that I just mentioned and the distributed namespace. HSM, is JC in the room? Eric just spent 2 days with you. What is the current status? Why is HSM off so far into the future? Do you want to stand up and be on the hot seat? Check. I don't know if it's on or not.
Okay, so the status of the HSM project today, we have a running code based on 2.1. We are doing not large, but a lot of tests with different companies like SGI or Bull for different customers they have. About the landing process, we are on step on doing from this big patch a lot of small patches that will be able to be reviewed by Whamcloud team, because we cannot arrive with multiple thousands line of code just to ask them to review. So we are in the process of doing that. So things like layout locking, all these, would say, small features in Lustre. So we have started this process of reviewing it and integrating the patches with Whamcloud. So we expect that we can have some compatible client code in Lustre 2.3. That means a Lustre 2.3 client will be able to talk with an HSM-aware server that will be available in 2.4. And maybe before as a separate patch, because it's when you just have to change, add a new thread on the MDS, it's much more easier to manage for a site to have a customized MDS. That's the status.
Okay, thank you. So there's a lot of other development going on. We're just pointing at the highlights, and there's other code development external to Whamcloud as well, of course. Again, you can go to wiki.whamcloud.com and see it all in real time. We do our work out in the open. If we catch one of our engineers doing something behind the fence, he gets spanked and everything goes out in the open. We don't want this to be a game of hide the ball. The roadmap refreshes are happening with every talk we give. We go back and take a look at what the roadmap should be like, refresh it, keep it on the web page. So that shouldn't be stale either. Chroma. I think this is going to be the most exciting thing to happen to Lustre in a long while. Lustre has a reputation of being very difficult to install and manage and maintain. Especially if you've got a smaller end system, you can't afford to have an engineer dedicated to your file system. The big sites like Oak Ridge and Livermore have multiple people dedicated to your file systems. And I think that's a bit of an embarrassment, and this should have been fixed a long time ago. So we're coming in with graphic-based tools that will allow you to install, will allow you to monitor, will allow you to fix, written by the guys that wrote the Lustre code. So they know what the state machine is inside Lustre. They know what things go wrong. They know what things they can fix. Version 1's not going to be completely feature complete, but we're on a roadmap. We've got a published document as to what we are going to build and when, so that this will be something that will allow moderately sized sites, but we think it's an entree into smaller sites that just want an appliance. So what this does is it lets all of the hardware vendors out there team with Whamcloud to put Chroma on their hardware and ship an appliance. Something rolls into your site, a couple of button clicks, you're formatting your file system and you're ready to go. I think that's the way it should be. So I'm pretty excited about this. I have extreme high hopes and expectations out of the development team, but our development team is really good. I was about to swear, but I'm on video. Our development team is really good in here. A couple specifics about this is it will present itself as a GUI, a single pane of glass, like you see here. It will also have a web-based interface and a command line interface. So if you run Bright Computing, for example, the Bright Computing Manager, you can integrate Lustre into that. Perhaps we'll do it for you with Bright, but that's not completely set up yet. If you're a geek that likes doing bash scripts to drive your file system, you'll be able to do that with this as well. We're all couple hardcore geeks here, and my guys like the command line better than anybody else, and that's why this hasn't been done in the past. But this is a tier 1 priority for us. And we think we're busy building a Lustre ecosystem here with Whamcloud taking care of the tree and everybody pulling from it to produce Lustre appliances. We think this will dramatically increase that market, and our partners will have a bigger sales base to draw from. Multi-vendor storage, that's what it's all about. The last thing I want to talk about is the Exascale push that's gotten a lot of airplay. Everything I've talked about up until now is let's take Lustre and make it production quality, harden it, make it so that you can use it in a bank, make it that it's enterprise class, bring Chroma to bear so that people who think big data means big numbers can have access to the technology that can drive a file system, a POSIX file system, at a terabyte a second. So remember, all of this is being done inside a POSIX file system. As we move forward to Exascale, we think it's another opportunity to revisit the POSIX standard, which is very, very old at this point. And so we're talking about modifying Lustre such that it can also do object storage models. So what we've got here is an image of a single file system that has a POSIX file in it, but also has maybe Hadoop type files, other HDF5 type files. We've studied the code, of course, we wrote the code, but we've studied it, and we think we can come up with a way that we can hang object files in the POSIX namespace. Because the metadata server is separate from the object storage server, we will give you a metadata server that gives you a directory tree and allows all of your normal change directory, look at sizes of files, and that sort of thing. But when you get to the leaf file, it can be a special file that you need to have your own library software, such as HDF5 or Hadoop, understand in order to be able to read and write that file. This is where we think you need to get to in order to get to Exascale. And so we've put this in as proposals for various Exascale committees. We're calling it Distributed Application Object Storage, and it has been socialized with a number of people in the US and gotten thumbs up. So when the Exascale stuff comes around, we're pushing this as one of the areas. And again, this is a lot more research than the other stuff we're doing, which is production-oriented. We believe in the assertion that you have to have revolutionary change to get to Exascale. We just think that there is battle-hardened infrastructure inside the current code base, such as AilNet and some of the locking mechanisms, that we can take advantage of and carve out a new way of doing things for the Exascale platforms. So what I want you to take away from this talk is that Lustre is stable today. Technically, it's rock solid in the 1.8 line. The 2.x line is a new code base, and so we're still shaking at that. Politically, the community has really, really stepped up to make this happen. I was one guy with an idea back 2 years ago, and over the past 18 months, it's really been 18 months since the company started, we have accumulated the key staff, critical mass of the engineers that it takes to run the tree, and the community has responded by writing contracts to Whamcloud for support and for development that have kept us going. And so I really want to thank the community for helping us out here. We really want to be seen as part of the community. That's why we're in the groups. We're doing everything in the open. We don't want to go back to the way things were. And we're growing this ecosystem. This trio of the community groups in Whamcloud is incredibly strong. We've got this single tree that we're all pointing at. It's in the open, it's public, it's mirrored at Indiana University in case Whamcloud gets taken out by a meteor. We've got this active development community, and we think, well, we're seeing more storage vendors starting to ship Lustre today. We get a lot of calls from random storage companies that want to partner with us to ship Lustre solutions. It's both compute and storage companies that are partnering with us to ship these solutions. This is my proud moment of the last year. We were nominated, along with the Open Scalable File System, should be EOFS as well, as the most significant thing in HPC worldwide last year, which I think is a huge feather, not just for Whamcloud, but for the community. Lustre's back, and it's stronger than ever.